Y por último, como les decía en este tríptico, la tercera parte la constituyen los profesores de la Universidad Carnegie Mellon, que provienen desde Pittsburgh. Han conocido en la primera sesión de la mañana a Francesca Torello y ahora es también el paso de dar el turno de palabra al profesor Joshua Bart. Pues van a realizar algo que creo que es muy interesante en esta sesión de maquetas en el tiempo, porque nos van a hacer aterrizar en pleno siglo XXI y van a plantear un diálogo muy interesante entre ellos dos, como una historiadora de la arquitectura y un profesor de robótica de una escuela de arquitectura norteamericana finalmente son capaces de encontrar un nexo común a través de esta vida después de la vida de las maquetas. Torello es historiadora de la arquitectura y profesora, como les he dicho, de la Escuela de Arquitectura de la Universidad Carnegie Mellon. Escribe sobre el papel de la arquitectura, la historia y la imaginación relacionadas con la pedagogía. Sus investigaciones se centran sobre todo en los viajes y el turismo. Un título imprescindible es su famoso Grand Tour Surrogates, que nos ha introducido en la sesión 3, y sus ricas conexiones con la cultura arquitectónica visual del momento y los media. A través de proyectos de humanidades digitales, como el que les van a dar a conocer, explora la idea de virtualidad latente de la arquitectura y los cambios culturales provocados por las tecnologías digitales en instituciones culturales de renombre desde sus museos y sus archivos. Y Joshua Bart es profesor asociado también de la Escuela de Arquitectura de la misma universidad. Es nombrado director asociado de investigación en diseño en el año 2021 y es educador arquitectónico que lleva a cabo investigación aplicada en la intersección de la cultura de la construcción y la tecnología robótica. Su docencia e investigación también cuestionan los binarios tradicionales en los que la cultura del diseño se ha visto enraigada a lo largo del tiempo, dicotomías que parecen aparentemente irresolubles como industria y artesanía, la máquina y la mano, el espacio virtual y el espacio físico o la producción digital y analógica, descubriendo evidentemente el gran potencial que aparece cuando esos binomios se borran y colisionan y producen fecundos advenimientos, ¿no? Sin más dilación, pues vamos a dar la bienvenida a este diálogo de la profesora Francesca Torello y Joshua Bart, que va a tener lugar en inglés, pero ellos van a hablar muy lentamente y estoy convencida de que todos los vamos a seguir con gran facilidad y vamos a aprender muchísimo de ellos. Gracias.
I'll take this one. Let's see if the technology is okay with us doing this.
Yes.
Are you guys
Hello.
good? Thank you very much again for the invitation. We're really excited to be here. We will start really from our collaboration, and we will start explaining our theoretical positions, and then we'll have a few examples and an actual example of augmented reality applied. I'm an historian of architecture, and our collaboration is based on the idea that we come from very different fields. Josh, you want to talk a little bit about your own profile, because I think is the one profile of the outsider, right?
Yes, certainly. So I'm trained as an architect, and I am housed in the School of Architecture at Carnegie Mellon. I teach across many of our programs and am mainly focused in our computational design program within the school. My primary research area is architectural robotics, and I focus on automation technologies and how they can inform the design and construction of the built environment. I have a particular focus on the robotic manipulation of hard set materials, which is looking at things like concrete and plaster that are very malleable in their plastic form and then set and harden to a final usable shape. And I explore how robots can basically shape these soft materials, which is, in the robotics world, a very difficult and messy problem. Through that work, I became very interested in plaster as a material, and that quickly sort of led me down a rabbit hole of the history of plaster as in architecture, and then very quickly from there into the world of plaster casts. And I found them to be a really interesting site of inspiration for contemporary design and design technologies.
Yes, and this is where we kind of intersected at first, and then we started collaborating, and you see in the background of one of the pictures, the plaster cast in the Hall of Architecture in Pittsburgh, which are literally next door to our school. So it was an obvious site for us to explore. Our position is really about the fact that traditionally the built environment in its physical form and the virtual are set in opposition, as if they were incompatible. And what we think is instead that they are an extension of each other, and there is actually a long tradition of what we call latent virtuality in architecture. So in reality, there's many ways in which architects have transported people to a virtual space way before there was any digital means to do so. And here are just a couple of well-known examples. You will certainly know all of this already from a very different perspective, but we interpret these spaces as proto-virtual spaces. And I would bet you have probably not thought about them from this perspective. And of course, these are also connected by the use of plaster in all of them. And how much they resemble to us to be virtual spaces in the digital world. Like if you look at this scene, it really looks like straight out of a video game, right? So, of course, at this point, we found our case study next door, the Hall of Architecture in the Carnegie Museum of Art today, when it was created. It was the Carnegie Institute. And this is a great collection, is the greatest still existing that is made of architecture pieces in the whole of the Americas. So it's a really important collection, and is about 140 plaster casts, some really monumental and some way smaller. And we'll show a little video of our project for these spaces, and then we'll tell you something more about the details. Hopefully it all works.
Plaster Recast is a mixed reality mobile app
Younger
for a tablet,
cells.
and it's used to enhance visitor experience to plaster cast collections at museums.
The interest we have for plaster casts of architecture is that they require a very interesting mental process in which the visitor, seeing a fragment, has to imagine the entire building. So in a way, this is a precedent of virtual reality that we're all talking about so much.
So the app is really built around the dual nature of plaster casts, that they're both physical objects that can be read in the gallery and referencing so many different connections outside of themselves.
So this was a very short video. You find the longer one online, easy to find with the title of a project. This project stems from the realization that at the Carnegie Museum, these pieces are very often not understood by the public. And so we wanted to give the public a tool to read these objects the way we think they were initially conceived, as portals to virtual spaces. Those virtual spaces that we think were always part of the way the architects conceived their own work. There were more aspects that interested us. One is certainly the pedagogical aspect. This collection was used for teaching. Our school is right next door. The two were created practically at the same time. One other aspect that really fascinates me always is the very a very, I'm trying to find the right word, the relationship with history that is not of awe and respect always, but is very practically minded and is very willing to tinker with objects from history at all times.
Yeah.
And this is definitely part of...
What it says on that column.
Yes.
Say what it
So
says on the
this says, I can make a quarter of the original. I can also make the original size. This is a picture from the archive of the Hall of Architecture collection, and is a postcard that a formatore was sending to the museum saying, I can do whatever you want. Tell me the scale you want. I can work with it. And this is a way of thinking of historical pieces that I find extremely interesting for today's designers. Like a relationship with history that is not just respectful, but is working with it and certainly playing with it sometimes. So the Hall of Architecture has also a very rich archive, so we were interested in exploring that in connection with all the versions of an object in the museum, from the plaster cast to the scan to the digital model, to all the archival material connected with it.
Yeah, we felt that the app could make the interplay of those different scales and different types of media more present to the public, so that they could explore them in different creative ways.
And then, of course, there's the aspect of the relationship with, that the public has with these pieces. And this is also really fascinating. Apart from the architects thinking of these pieces as portals to virtual space, there's a general public that can have with these pieces, and should have with these pieces, a relationship that is actually of immersion, ante litteram, if you want. So these pieces were meant to be immersive. They were meant to be traversed sometimes. The doors of a giant plaster cast that we have seen before could open, and there was actually a connection to the nearby library through those doors. So you would traverse the plaster cast itself. These are all aspects that we talk about a lot in relation with the digital, but they were already there. The plaster casts imply all of those. And models, of course, do imply. I'm thinking of your fantastic model that you just talked about. There's all of that implied into those objects. And then, of course, there's the interest for plaster that we both have from very different perspectives. And the fact that is the material of architectural illusion is the material that can seamlessly connect flat surfaces with depths and imitate all other materials.
Yeah, I think for us, a kind of interesting critique of plaster in modernity, that it's a fake material, has
what makes it interesting.
Circled back on itself in contemporary digital practice, where it's precisely plaster's kind of plastic ability. It can take any shape, and it's simultaneously a non-material, but it can be any material through faux finishes. And we see very similar practices in the way kind of hyper and digital materiality is treated. If you know this example of the Stanford Bunny, this is how all computer graphics kind of test the way that they make materials appear realistic on a computer screen.
So here we have just starting point for the next discussion, and those are organized in two groups. One is about artifacts. So we have the objects themselves to deal with. How can we use history to think, and really what can the history of plaster casts and models tell us about the future of architectural curation, considering all these digital artifacts that are appearing on the scene? And how can the lessons that we learn from the collections of plaster casts and models inform our thinking regarding design and experience of virtual and digital environments. In a way, what are plaster casts particularly as objects doing, and how do they relate with the architect's work? Like, how do they operate? And then, in relation to the public in a gallery, we have the age-old question of how to show architecture. And one of the things that we've been thinking about a lot is the idea, and here you see a series that all comes from the Cité de l'Architecture. There's very different ways of talking about architecture in a gallery, considering, of course, at the background, the idea that you cannot bring in the entire building, but what you choose to bring in place of the building will give affordances, so give a certain reading that will have a lot of positives and some negatives, and each one of these objects that we choose, be it a drawing, a model, a plaster cast, a piece of a building in one-to-one scale, all of those have positive elements but lose something in the process. And of course, the same does digital model. So it is interesting for us to think about what this means in terms of what the architects see in these objects, but also what the museum in the gallery is seeing in these objects. Did I say everything there?
Yes, I think
this was a little bit of a longer discussion.
And embedded in that question is I think the fact that these artifacts are both kind of documenting something, representing something, a part of a history, but they're also extremely generative. They're used educationally in design. They spark creativity. So they're both projective and analytical kind of simultaneously.
Yes. And then, apart from the object itself, the artifact itself, there's the networks that we were talking about today, all day, the idea that there are institutions and a web of relations around the artifacts themselves, and those are really part of a story. We cannot do without them. And so how do we archive, curate, disseminate digital collections of three-dimensional assets that are the contemporary version of those plaster casts, and that agreement to exchange plaster casts of a global collection from 1867 is very similar to our contemporary discussions. And what you see here is a catalog picture from the archive of the Hall of Architecture that was making available to the public all versions and all scales, in this case of a Nike of Samothrace and other pieces of the same kind. And on the other side is a 3D printed wing held by one of the curators at the
a master plasterer.
A master plasterer himself, and our guide when we visited with our students. So that's a 3D printed wing, but it's the same object. So what are the relations there? And how can the exploration of historic collections really inform how cultural institutions shape the future?
And just because it's interesting, the wing is a composite of multiple 3D scans of different casts and molds that were combined together to make a kind of, as yes. accurate reproduction as possible. So it's a kind of weird synthesis of.
But it's nothing
casts.
different from what was done in a lot of the plaster cast collections, where, for example, we have reassembled orders. I know in Pittsburgh we have the Order of Halicarnassos, which never existed as such. It's pieces, but they were reassembled so that people could see it and understand it. So all of these questions really interest us a lot, and we hope they're a good starting point for discussion. Thank you very much. Carolina, join us, and then maybe we can.
I think that it's better to continue together because I think we only have almost 10 minutes to open our discussion to the audience here in the auditorium, and the question may be addressed from home. Porque en el fondo a la 1:30 creo que podría empezar la conferencia del profesor Juan José Lahuerta, que no sé dónde está. Está muy lejos. Pero bueno, yo creo que irá bajando peldaño a peldaño y llegará a la 1:30 justo a tiempo. Creo que es el momento de ceder la palabra al público y que nos dirija todas aquellas preguntas de las sesiones de esta mañana. Gracias.
Todo el mundo muy cansado.
No hay preguntas. Bueno, pues yo voy a lanzar una pregunta solo, entonces, que está relacionada con uno de los temas que se han ido trabajando, creo, Francesca, en la sesión 3, que es la discusión alrededor de la palabra canon, esa palabra tan complicada para los historiadores tanto del arte como de la arquitectura. Hemos ido tomando notas y creo que es importante ver cuando el pórtico de la Gloria, mejor dicho, la Catedral de Santiago, deja de ser un ejemplo de arquitectura gótica y pasa a ser un ejemplo de arquitectura románica, por las contribuciones que Robinson, desde esa primera monografía de Edmund hasta siguientes, ¿no? Se va como reconfigurando ese canon. Lo mismo sucedía con la arquitectura de Toledo, y me gustaría lanzar una pregunta a los ponentes de la primera parte de la mañana sobre esta idea de este canon imposible, ¿no? Al final se ha acabado hablando en la conferencia maravillosa también de los profesores Carlos Plaza y Costanza Beltrami, cómo al final ese gótico flamígero que veía Riaño da paso al Islam de Vicente Lampérez en una misma obra, y cómo finalmente Ferguson la clasifica de mudéjar, es decir, lo inclasificable de la historia del arte. Si alguno de los interpelados quiere unirse a esta reflexión, ya sea José Miguel, Carlos o Costanza.
Pues de modo muy breve, ¿no? Pero yo te citaría a ti cuando citas a Kubler, ¿no? Es decir, que cada relevo, que al final una réplica se puede entender como tomar el relevo de algo existente, pues no hace otra cosa que crear otra cosa nueva a partir de la propia mirada contemporánea, buscando cosas diferentes, ¿no? Entonces, todas estas réplicas y modelos que hemos visto tienen un contexto de creación, que es lo que les da muchas veces sentido, que es lo que hemos estado buscando. Y naturalmente cada uno de los personajes mira una cosa diferente, busca una cosa diferente, le da un significado diferente. Cole identifica en modo diferente que Riaño y que a la vez que Lampérez, ¿no? Por ejemplo. Robinson busca unos elementos diferentes en España que el resto y propone una España diferente. Contreras, pues exactamente lo mismo, ¿no? Utiliza las maquetas en un modo pues completamente operativo a su búsqueda de una Alhambra que él está intentando investigar, conocer, desgranar, ¿no? Y que será muy diferente de la de sus sucesores y del propio Riaño cuando también indaga sobre la Alhambra, ¿no? Entonces las maquetas y las réplicas como algo móvil, ¿no? Más allá de la canastilla que también se movía, pues creo que es algo que ha cruzado buena parte de las intervenciones y que dependen de la propia posición histórica, como decía Kubler, y que tú has citado de un modo muy, muy certero.
Yo creo que la profesora Monsen Asunción lo ha dicho muy bien en una frase que ha anotado, pero parece paradigmática. El pórtico sale de España siendo gótico y regresa siendo románico. Esa frase me ha parecido maravillosa, Montserrat. O sea, que también nos ha hecho pensar en ese vaivén de las ideas siempre.
Una pregunta que yo tengo es, a question I would have about the canon in general is how much the public needs to be prepared to understand or to read, and how that quickly changes. And we see that happening historically through our research, but then we need to also account for it. So I'm curious, the museum experts probably have opinions about some of this. In our case, we noticed that the collection we were working on was not understood, and it's used as a backdrop for other activities. So that gave us the starting point for creating augmented reality, really to give tools to explain. But there's something about which canon we're teaching, or if we're not teaching to the canon anymore, which is part of what we do, right? And I'm imagining that is a very good move away from a restrictive canon, but at the same time it creates some difficulties in the reading.
¿Alguien más en sala que quiera? Constanza pide un turno de palabra.
I think that it's also very interesting to see how all these casts, when they're together in the same space, like at the V&A, they create new canons that cut across like national boundaries. And I think it's very hard, maybe, when looking at the historiography, because in the 19th century there is so much emphasis on kind of national histories of art, that I think it's easy to forget that actually you had these spaces of interaction where, everything gets confused a bit, and you can create like new histories, maybe cutting across these boundaries. And I didn't have time to talk about this, but in the South Kensington plaster cast collection, there is the cast from San Juan de los Reyes and one from Rosslyn Chapel in Scotland. They are back to back. And Ferguson, the architectural historian, he really compares Spanish and Scottish architecture. So I think there is something there of like writing a different history that maybe can only really be realized when these objects are decontextualized and put together in new ways.